Hi, and welcome to another episode of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix. I am your host, Danny Brown. Today, I am joined by Preslie Hirsch, the owner of Hey Preslie Nutrition. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Preslie, tell me a little bit about how you got your start and kind of what your expertise is in the nutrition field.
Yeah. So how I got my start is a super awesome story. So growing up, I wanted to be a journalist. My goal was to work as the producer of the Today Show, which, still maybe someday. So I was super interested in journalism. I was a really competitive athlete, played sports a lot growing up. And then I was playing competitive volleyball in high school and was planning to go play college volleyball. And when I was 14, so about a sophomore in high school, I got really sick and I came home from volleyball practice and I was like throwing up blood and had to go to the emergency room. And I was like internally bleeding and went and got checked into the hospital. And my whole life I had had stomach aches, but we went to several primary cares and specialists, and it was kind of just like, it's just Preslie. She just has sensitive stomach. Give her some Tums, she'll be fine. And so it was one of those stomach aches that just got really bad. And so after several tests, they found all these cancerous lesions in my stomach. And being young, that was pretty weird.
Yeah.
And my gastroenterologist was like, you have to quit volleyball. Like, you can't put that much stress on your body. You have to focus on healing, go on this intense medicine regimen, all those things. So now I had all this free time that I wasn't playing volleyball. And so I got really involved in journalism even more and became the editor-in-chief of the paper, which was a super cool, blessing in disguise. But then when I got my first job, I was like, well, I still want to do something in fitness, but I can't go back to volleyball. So I started working at Lifetime Fitness. And I fell in love with bodybuilding. And, I'd always had like self-image issues, and a lot of people do at that age, I
think everybody has.
Totally. Not even just girls. Yeah. And so I'd always kind of struggled with that. Now working at Lifetime, where all these people were like, looked really great at, I think it made the problem even worse. And I would see that all these people would do these shows where they would like get like really tan. And at the time, you don't really understand it. And they're like orange and super lean. And you're like, whoa. And they get trophies for that. So I was like, if I can get on stage in front of like hundreds of people in a bikini, like surely I'll feel good about myself by then, right? So naturally, right? You know how that story ends. So I remember coming home from my first show. I won, which was super exciting. And I had like my tiara and I'm sitting in bed with my fake tan. And I was like, I still don't feel good,
Yeah.
And then within 2 days of my last show, I gained all the weight back plus some, and I'd lost a little over 20 pounds. I mean, So it was a pretty fast rebound, and metabolism, just havoc.
And it seems like a lot in 2 days.
Totally. And some of it's water for sure, because you're dehydrated going on stage. But a lot of it was, and I wasn't even eating terrible. It was just eating like sufficient calories to like have some energy, and your metabolism just bounces back so hard. And so after that, I was like, maybe there's something to this nutrition thing that I don't understand. And so I just dove headfirst, went and changed my major at ASU from journalism to nutrition, and fell in love with it.
Wow. That's incredible. Was there, to kind of rewind and go back to your story, the issue that you were having with your stomach, was that nutritional? Was that due to nutrition?
Great question. So they don't actually know. I mean, they think I had it kind of getting worse for so long that it's hard to know like what caused it. But two things they think that made it worse was, one, I ate a very high acidic diet. Mm-hmm. And at the time, my family didn't eat good, but they didn't eat terrible. And I would eat like pineapple all the time and strawberries all the time. Like, I loved acidic fruit. I loved like pickles and like very acidic things. Mm-hmm. And I'd snack on them all the time. So acidity is not great if you already are having a sensitive stomach. So learned that. And I, being a competitive athlete, would get bumps and bruises and injuries and take ibuprofen pretty often. And if you read the back of ibuprofen, it literally says like, will rip your stomach apart. Yeah. So learned that the hard way.
So all of the combination of all of that kind of, so because of that, did that help lead you to kind of where you're at now to want to help people with their nutrition?
Totally. And, partially nutrition. I think nutrition was the thing that I loved because I mean, everybody loves to eat, and I enjoy cooking. And I think it was a very practical way of saying, okay, I probably am not going to go to medical school. I'm probably not going to be a doctor. And I don't necessarily want to work in the healthcare system per se, but I think that there's some aspect of this where I can help people. And so I think nutrition was kind of that nugget that I found. But absolutely. And for several years, I struggled with stomach aches or headaches or hormone imbalances and kind of these things that a lot of people have and just don't acknowledge.
Right.
Or just like I did for years, think that's just my normal. I just have back pain or I just have stomach aches. So helping people realize like, hey, you were made to feel really good. Like if something's off, that means, A, it can probably be addressed with food. And if it can't, you still need to address it.
probably inflammation caused by something. And it's amazing in the last, I feel like, I don't know if it's me just because now I pay attention closer to it, or if it's just in the last 5 years or so, how much information has come out on how your diet can affect your life, how you feel, depression, the gut the microbiome in your gut can contribute to Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's and all of these different things, and how they're just now kind of scratching the surface on that.
Yeah, there's so many cool things all the time. And, something else, another medical issue I've dealt with is endometriosis, which is something that they say it impacts about 10% of women, which is a lot. And you can do this thing called seed cycling where you eat like certain seeds at certain times of the month. And it sounds kind of funny, but I mean, a lot of people have seen really cool improvements from it. And so even from little things like that to people that are chronically ill going on the carnivore diet, like we were talking about, before we hopped on, and, going vegan helps a lot of people in certain ways, or going into ketosis. And so there's all these different tools you can use with food that can help you no matter what you're dealing with, whether it's headaches or brain fog or, some serious illness. And there's definitely a lot more research coming out all the time about it, which is so cool.
Right. And there's a lot of false information out there too. You start, getting on the interwebs and you can find all kinds of bad info. So, what can someone do to figure out the proper diet for them and kind of what works for their body type?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first thing is taking a lot of inventory of information. So even if there's a podcaster that you love or a certain journalist you really like, gaining information from a lot of different places and kind of compiling it, whether it's literally like bookmarking the sources or putting them down somewhere so you can reference them and see how they compare and who they're referring to as far as their sources. I think that's really important, because if you just follow one person as gospel, they could have the best intentions, but it's still one person. So,
well, and they're probably, spouting off what works for them.
Totally.
I feel that, people who are vegans and people who are CrossFitters just don't shut up about it.
Right.
And that may not be the proper diet for everybody.
Yeah.
And, in fact, I would argue for a lot of people that the vegan diet's probably not the most healthy, that you see these incredible gains in the beginning, but over the long run, your body can really suffer because it's missing out on, valuable nutrients.
Totally. And one thing that they taught in school, which studying nutrition in school was great. I've learned a lot more in my coaching practice, but
for sure.
One of the things they talked a lot about was never ruling out entire food groups. So even though there's, a lot of research support that dairy isn't great for you, not having it ever again in your life, well, you're going to feel really sick next time you want to have pizza at your son's birthday party,
Right.
So there's ruling out entire food groups is not generally a good idea. And finding the thing that you're going to stick to. A lot of my clients or potential clients will ask me about keto or things like that, but if you love...
I'm guilty of that.
But if you love carbs, you're probably not going to do very well. And will you see some changes as far as you'll crave carbs a little bit less? Absolutely. But if you think that you just cannot stay away from whatever it is, rice or potatoes or sweets, for more than a week at a time, then you're not going to be successful in ketosis, and that's fine, because there's other diets that'll work. So finding the thing that's going to help you, just if you're doing CrossFit, you need carbs for post-workout.
For sure.
And so vegan is, or something ketosis wouldn't be the best option.
Can you, for our audience, kind of explain the most popular diets that are out there and kind of give a little bit of description and background on each one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the one I coach generally is macronutrient based, or macros as people call it. Sometimes you'll see it as IIFYM, or if it fits your macros. And macros are just protein, fats, and carbs. So it's just tracking the amount of those things that you intake each day. Pretty straightforward.
Now, if you're tracking that, there's still good calories versus bad calories. You don't want to just eat. I follow Mike Vacanti, and he has a T-shirt that says "Ice cream fits my macros."
Right.
You don't want to just start eating a bunch of ice cream.
Totally.
Because it's an inflammatory.
Still not great for your health.
High in sugar.
Right.
You still don't want those things, even if it does fit your macros.
Right. And the hard part is, you can do that on macros in the sense that, as far as losing weight, or gaining weight, it's calories in versus calories out.
Sure.
So if you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight, consistently. If you are in a calorie surplus, you're going to gain weight. If you're eating pretty close to your base, your baseline, how much you burn a day, you're going to maintain. So if you do that through having ice cream for breakfast and then fish and broccoli the rest of the day, then you'll see the same results.
Sure.
Will you feel as good? No.
Right.
Is your health going to be as good long term? No. So there's, just like with any diet, there's people that do it well and people that don't. You know, my clients definitely are not eating ice cream for breakfast. I hope.
You hope.
Yeah. They're not tracking it if they
Right.
are. So macros is a popular one, and that's the one that I think is really successful. And I'll tell people, you know, it's not for everybody, just like any diet, it's not for everybody. I think it's great for a lot of people. And it's my favorite one to coach people through.
Okay.
Vegan, absence of animal products, pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then ketosis, if you're in ketosis, that's a state, a metabolic state. So it would be a ketogenic diet, or keto for short. And that's actually defined as like low carbohydrates, not necessarily high fat, but because you're having low carbohydrates, you tend to have higher fat because you obviously can't starve yourself
Right.
long term. So most people that follow keto, I would say, aren't in ketosis. They're just eating kind of a keto way, which is low carb, high fat, moderate protein.
Sure. Okay. And so what's the difference then between a keto diet and then a paleo diet? They seem very similar.
Yeah, I would say they are pretty similar. Paleo is following like a Paleolithic, like how our ancestors used to eat. And some people take it really far, like, only having blueberries a couple times a year, because if you were foraging for fruit, you wouldn't be able to have blueberries year round, right?
Seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. Like, what can my ancestors have blueberries right now? So that's like hardcore paleo. Regular paleo is like meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, no starch, no sugar, very like foods that don't have food labels. And then keto, you can still eat like a lot of processed foods. It's just high fat, moderate protein, very, very low carb.
I gotcha. So how do they start? How do they, there's all these different options that they can choose from. It can seem very overwhelming. Do you recommend that somebody just sign on with a nutrition coach right away? Do you recommend that they kind of start and figure out themselves on their own?
Yeah, good question. I would say actually not starting with a nutrition coach right away for most people. I think there's a lot of benefit in trial and error, and you can figure a lot of things out by doing some self-experimentation. But it takes that extra level of being a little bit mindful. And so realizing, okay, if I had...
Which I think most people lack.
Totally.
I mean, it's a lot of self-discipline.
Right. And it can be very small. Like it could be whatever you eat for dinner, like jot down in a journal how you feel. If you feel like super lethargic, or maybe you feel like really good, or maybe you can't go to the bathroom in the next morning, and it's hard for people to kind of know what to look for. But I would say even just jotting that kind of information down, whether it teaches you something or not, at least now you have data to take to a coach, or it teaches you something really cool. So the mindfulness piece is huge. So I would say most people starting with self-experimentation and doing very basic things, which a lot of people don't love. It's not super sexy. Like that, like people will come to me and be like,
time.
How many calories do I need to eat? And I'm like, you have to earn the right to like count your calories.
Right.
And so if you are dehydrated because you're not drinking enough water, then it doesn't matter how many calories you eat. You're going to feel like crap. And if you're not eating vegetables, you're not drinking, or getting any fiber, then you're not going to have the energy levels that you could, even if you're eating everything else perfectly. So I think about it like a pyramid. Not like the nutrition pyramid where bread's on the bottom.
Which is a terrible
oh my gosh, I know. I feel like
pyramid.
I need a new shape to identify that.
Yeah.
So if, water's at the bottom, stress management's at the bottom, sleep is at the bottom, all of these very basic needs are at the bottom. And then as you move up, it's like, okay, calorie intake. Are your portions like decent? Are you like eating until you're gorging yourself? Are you going all day starving? And then you move your way up, and then it's like macros. Okay, let's make sure that you're getting sufficient protein so that you feel full at some point. You're not eating bottomless pits of carbs. And then as you work up, it's like micronutrients, like vitamins and minerals. And then you get up to the tippy top, and it's like supplements and timing, But if you're not eating carbs after 6 or whatever old thing you're following, none of that is going to matter if you're not sleeping well, not managing your stress, all of those kinds of things.
So when someone works with you or works with a nutrition coach, then it sounds like almost like a life coach.
Absolutely.
Like you're coaching someone on how they should live their daily life to be, at an optimized level.
Totally. And I suppose I should specify that it really depends on the coach, just like any program.
Sure.
We go to a great CrossFit gym where they work on recovery and warming up and things like that. But there's a lot of gyms that you show up and you pound your head into the pavement and you get out of there, and there's no emphasis on the other areas of your life. So I really pride myself on working on those things, but I have done nutrition programs, both when I didn't know a lot and was first getting into nutrition through other coaches, and have had clients come to me that have like talked about their experiences. And, I've obviously have friends that are nutrition coaches. So I think a lot of people don't spend enough time on the lifestyle stuff. And there's programs, you can pay $10 a month for like this online person or a robot to spit out macros for you. But again, then you're not working on micronutrients and water and
Right.
sleep and stress management. So, but a lot of what I do is life coaching for sure.
I think sleep is a huge one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how little sleep I think that we all get.
Totally.
And how, you're looking at these little screens and it's messing up your circadian rhythm and just everything that is involved in our daily lives and how much it messes us up.
Yeah. And, I'm totally, I can't recall the specific statistic, but I have read that if you take, like the average adult male and deprive him of sleep, not necessarily, have him not sleep, but just significantly 4 hours, maybe 3 or maybe 5, for 3 nights in a row, he'll be pre-diabetic after the 3rd day.
That's insane.
And people do that for years, and then they sleep in on the weekend and I'm like, oh, I'm caught up. Or, you talk to people all the time who are like, this is normal for me. I always get 6 hours, and that's the kind of stuff I get from new clients a lot is this is my normal. And I'm like, no, but it's not.
It's not healthy. And it's not healthy to sleep in on the weekend to try and make up for it.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't work that way.
So do you have any interesting stories about any of your clients, any kind of success stories on helping them reach their goals?
Man, I've had so many cool clients. My job is so cool. Man, I mean,
it is. I mean, I'm super impressed with where you've taken your career. I mean, for our audience, you started working, you got out of school and you started working full time at Shamrock.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And within, I feel like it was less than a year.
Yeah.
You were ready to start your own business. And maybe we should talk a little bit about that and how you took this big leap of faith and how scary that was. How did you kind of prep yourself to go from, a cushy 9 to 5, not that it was cushy, but a 9 to 5 where you've got a steady paycheck to venturing out and becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own thing?
Totally. And, I took an entrepreneurship class in college and I hated it and was like, this is so stupid. I have to do this class because I'm never going to work for myself. I want to work up the corporate ladder. It was just like always my dream to like be high up in some corporate company. And so I got like a corporate job right after college, loved it. Working for Shamrock was a great company. But after I graduated, a couple of my friends were like, oh, could you write me a meal plan or could you write me macros? And I was like, yeah, I love this stuff. You know, and I just got my degree in it. Why not? So I was like helping people for free and meeting people at coffee shops and having lunch with them to like help them with their macros. Loved it. And then they would tell their friends and they would tell their friends. And eventually it was like, okay, well, I can't like afford like gas or time to keep doing this for free. So maybe I'll charge them like $20.
Yeah.
And so it started kind of building. And in college, I had started a blog because when I switched to nutrition, I just loved it. And I would call my mom after like every class and be like, oh my gosh, there's this cool thing I learned. And like, bless her heart, she was supportive, but she didn't care. And so I was like, I have a journalism background. I'll just write about it online. If people care, they'll read it. And it grew like people in other countries were reading it. And I would write about meal prepping and macros and super fun. So then as I was kind of building this book of business, I was like, maybe I'll just move my blog over to a website where I can like sell meal plans. And so it was very organic, which I think was the really cool thing is I had a steady paycheck. So all the money I made from meal plans or macro prescriptions, I would just reinvest back in the business.
That's smart.
And everything grew very organically. Like one of my clients, Bianca, is a competitive CrossFitter. So when she was going to go to regionals, I was like, you need to have my shirt on. So I'll get shirts, and then everybody wanted shirts. And so it's grown very organically, which has been super fun. And I think having it not be contingent on making money initially was so fun. I
think Gary Vaynerchuk would be super proud of you.
Thank you. And so it got to the point where I was working every night, every weekend, which, I love the hustle and I loved what I was doing. But it got to the point where, one of my jobs was going to start sacrificing.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if I keep saving money, I probably can do it. In worst case, I'll go back and get another corporate job.
Yeah. They'll always be there.
Totally. And it has just been so much fun.
That's awesome.
I love it.
It's been really fun to watch it grow. You've got your own podcast where you interview other health and wellness individuals. It's a really entertaining podcast.
Thank you.
Recommend that people listen to it.
Thanks.
So, what does the future hold for Hey Preslie Nutrition?
Yeah, that's a good question. The podcast was a really cool thing. And something that one of my podcast guests actually told me, her name's Lindsay Schwartz. She was like the second or third guest I had on. She told me this at a conference that I went to of hers last year for female entrepreneurs. And it was, she didn't come up with it, but kind of really resonated with me was the why not me idea, And so I've always listened to podcasts and I always think they're cool. And I was like, that'd be cool to start one. And then I had to catch myself and I was like, why not me? I could do that.
Yeah.
And so that was a really cool leap of faith. So that's been really awesome to grow. It's been so cool to see my clients. I have a couple clients training for the Ironman and people doing really cool things in CrossFit. And, one client thought she wanted to do a show and kind of revisited her why. Now she's in powerlifting. I mean, so I don't know necessarily where it's going on the grand scale of like business moves, but I mean, every day my clients are doing really cool things. And so that's just going to keep happening organically, I think.
Yeah, that's got to be fun. I mean, to watch people reach those goals, those fitness goals.
Yeah.
I think everyone can kind of relate to trying to do that. It's a very hard thing, I think, for a lot of people. The food that we eat now is so addictive,
right?
And you have these intense cravings. And so to help people get through that, so that they can attain those body image goals that they have, the fitness goals that they have, I think it's really, really cool that you're doing that.
And fitness aside too, I mean, not to interrupt, but, I work with a lot of stay-at-home moms and a lot of people that don't really love working out. And going to breakfast with your girlfriends and not feeling bad about what you ate, like that's a win.
Yeah.
And like seeing the scale and not feeling like you have to get on it and like feel really upset, like that's a win. Or like putting on a blouse that you used to love that fits again. So I have a lot of clients too that aren't fitness related. And so it's really cool to have that balance of there's a win in every day, and whether you're doing great on your journey or need a little bit of help, you can always find the win.
What I found super interesting working with you is that, doing this type of nutrition it's a long play. It's not something that happens overnight. And I don't feel like I'm depriving myself of good food ever.
Yeah.
I feel like I eat a ton. I think Alyssa can vouch for that. I'm constantly adding food. I know that I'm more active than most, but even people who aren't super active and doing it for fitness, they've even told me that they don't feel like they're depriving themselves of anything. So it doesn't feel like you're on a diet.
Right.
Which I think is huge.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle shift because diets have like this finite time, and if you want to be like more diligent because you're about to get married or because you have specific timeline goals, right? That's different. But if you're like, okay, no, I'm going to restrict myself from all sweets for this amount of time because, I want to feel good. And then you just go right back.
That's like the Biggest Loser thing.
Totally.
I think that every single person that's won the Biggest Loser, except for one person, has put on all the weight that they lost and more.
It's crazy
because it's just it's not sustainable.
Right.
What you're coaching, and I think what a lot of nutritionists coach, is sustainable long term.
Yeah, and it's hard because you nailed it on the head that it's not instant, and that's people have a hard time with patience in anything, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just went to Flagstaff and. My wife's friend came along with us and her boyfriend, and she just started counting macros.
Oh, cool.
And she's frustrated because it's only been like a month and she's only losing like a pound a week.
Which is awesome.
Which I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
That's cool. Right.
I'm so impressed that you're tracking, your macros and you have goals and she's like, but it's not happening fast enough. And it's like, well, it takes time.
Right.
The crash stuff, again, it's not sustainable.
Well, and it's, it's picking the wins along the way. This past January, I did this cool thing with not just my clients, but anybody that followed me, where I made these jars and they were called All Good Things jars. And what you do is I sent everybody a little sticky pad that, had my logo on it. And it was like, okay, every time something good happens, whether you just got a workout in and didn't think you were going to that day or like something really amazing, you jot it down, you put it in the jar, and then you look at it at the end of the year. Because the news like identifies, the negative things in the world.
Absolutely.
And we're always drawn to the negative things. So if we can remember those positives and write them down, and I'll get clients that'll text me and be like, oh, I'm the same weight I was last week, but then I can help them and say, right, but 2 weeks ago, because it's so hard to remember your own small wins. And if you're doing a diet to lose weight and that's the sole goal, like obviously some people need to lose weight for their health or if it's going to make you feel better.
A lot of people in America do.
Totally. Not opposed to losing weight. But if your only goal is to lose weight or for an aesthetic reason, you're not going to stick to it very likely through the really hard stuff.
Sure.
There's going to be things that are going to get in your way. And so if you're like, oh, I've only lost 4 pounds, not this is your friend, but I've only lost 4 pounds and my goal is to lose weight, you need a goal that's more ingrained with you, the person you are, and why you really want to take care of your health. Mm-hmm. Because just wanting to lose weight is not very like appealing when it's 10 p.m. and you'd rather have Oreos.
Yeah. You got to have a good why.
Right.
I mean, I think 100%. It's like anything in life. You have to have
Yeah.
a good why. Otherwise, you're just kind of going through the motions. And
Totally.
you won't stick to really anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And Start With Why by Simon Sinek is a great book.
Oh, for sure.
If somebody wants to dive a little more into that.
He came out with a workbook to go along with it, which is super helpful.
Yeah, I forget what it's called now, but it's like a team. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really good book. So then you've got the podcast, you're doing the coaching. Now, can people work with you just local, or are you, can they come to you online?
Yeah, good question. So I work with people all over the country, and I actually have a couple clients in Europe, which is super fun, that I met through friends in the military.
Nice.
But I work with people all over. I do phone and email coaching, so people have the option based on what works best for their schedule. But very few of my clients are in person, which is super fun.
Very cool. That's awesome to be able to do things remote like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So some real quick kind of fact or fiction questions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of urban myths when it comes to dieting and stuff. So will eating late at night make me fat?
No.
No.
I know that's a boring answer.
Yeah. Well, you can expand. So like, does some people say you shouldn't eat within so many hours of going to bed because then the food just sits in your stomach. But that sounds like that's false.
Right.
So
as far as like eating late at night, if you're having a lot of times when you're eating late at night, it's not like chicken and broccoli. It's like sugar. So like,
True.
That's probably not the best option just because you probably should be eating less sugar. If you eat close to bed, calories are energy. So it can definitely keep you up. So now you're compromising your sleep, which is like at the bottom of the pyramid again. But you could not eat all day and eat all of your food at 10 p.m.
Which some people do. They fast all day and then have just a massive dinner.
And if you're eating the same amount of calories as you would as if you spread it out throughout the day, and that's like the calories you need to be at, you would see the same body results. And are you going to feel as good? That's a different question. But as far as like weight loss goes or whatever your physical goal is, eating at night totally doesn't matter.
Awesome. So then certain foods like grapefruit and celery can burn fat to help you lose weight.
Total fat burners. No,
that's not true.
No.
I was always heard that celery had negative calories.
Yeah. Which is like not a thing. It's and especially grapefruit, which has sugar because it's fruit.
Right.
But no, there is the thermic effect of food. So you eat food, your body has to expend some amount of calories to digest the food. But even though celery is a low calorie food, it does not take your body more calories.
I think your body probably runs pretty efficiently when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And eating more celery probably will just make you sad.
Yeah, right. You got to cover it with like a bunch of peanut butter and like raisins, ants on the log. I don't know.
Right.
Snacking is not good for you, and you should be avoided if you want to lose weight.
Not true, but it's all about what works for you. So if you need a snack because you eat lunch at noon and you're not going to eat dinner till 8 p.m. when you pick up your kids from soccer, and you think somewhere in there you're going to go to McDonald's because you're starving, you probably should have a snack.
Yeah.
Most people don't need to snack very often, and you'll feel a little bit more satisfied at your meals if you're not snacking. So if you're snacking all day and then you don't feel satisfied after lunch, it's like, well, because you've been eating little bits all day.
Sure.
You're better off, like you want to be a healthy level of hunger going into your meals, satisfied, not stuffed when you're done. So sometimes if you're snacking, you have a harder time identifying those hunger cues. So it's not that one is better than another. You just want to do what makes sense for you based on your lifestyle.
And what do you recommend people snack on?
Yeah.
If they are going to snack.
Nuts are great because they have good fat, they have protein, a little bit of carb, and they keep you really satisfied, so you don't need a ton of them. Beef jerky is great because it's pure protein.
Yeah.
Fruit is great, like apples, bananas. You just want something in theory that is somewhat satisfying, so it has a little bit of fat. So like an apple with a little bit of peanut butter would be better, or a little bit of trail mix, like Trader Joe's sells like awesome little trail mix packets. Like some Greek yogurt with some berries is really good. If you have something that's pure carbs, like a rice cake or just a banana, it's not really going to like do a lot for you. So then it's kind of like, well, is that really helpful?
I remember back in the 90s when rice cakes were a thing.
When I ate them in bodybuilding all the time.
Yeah, it was like you're fat-free everything,
right?
High carbs, high sugars, and the food industry vilified fat, and it seems like it's come full circle.
Totally, and now
like, fat is like super
people
sexy.
People are drinking coconut oil. Yeah.
Oh, I had some butter in my coffee today. So
when you told me the first time you did that, I was like, "You're one of those people." Yeah. Which brings up a great point, and I won't get off on too much of a tangent. But real food, so foods that come from the earth, whether that's animal or plant based, more of the natural things we should be eating, don't have advertising. So if a food says fat free, that means somebody is paying to tell you that it's fat free, which means somebody makes money on that. So normal food, like an avocado, doesn't say like good source of fat or like high protein, right? Because it's just an avocado.
Yeah.
So more foods with less advertising is like the way you should go.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed being on somewhat of a higher fat diet and using butter again. I mean, I hadn't used butter
so good.
forever, and now just, using it in eggs and putting it on vegetables, it's just incredible how good it tastes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So a protein shake is the best post-workout drink.
Yeah, good question. So you need carbs and or a real meal after you work out. So whether that's a meal that you eat or a meal that you drink, doesn't really matter. But a protein shake generally has just protein. Like a whey protein shake is just protein. So you could add coconut water to it. You could have an apple with it. Like you need some kind of, or eat like a real meal. You need to eat after you work out, but it needs to be more than just protein, because protein is great. You need protein, but you need carbs to repair the muscles that you just broke down during that workout. And a lot of people don't respond well to whey. A lot of people have dairy intolerances and just don't know it.
I do. I don't do casein or whey.
Yeah.
I do a high quality like pea protein.
Right. And so I think a lot of people should start with a plant-based protein. And then if you want to try a whey or a casein, and you just want to pay attention. Totally.
Yeah.
If it makes you bloated, if it cramps your stomach, if you feel your skin's breaking out, you probably shouldn't have it. And then, going with a vegan protein or even a collagen, which is beef-based, is great for a lot of people.
Too.
Yeah.
I really like the collagen protein.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sea salt is healthier version of regular salt.
Yeah, good one. So yes, in the sense that it does have more minerals. So it has more micronutrients than regular table salt. Way back when table salt used to have iodine in it.
Doesn't it still?
No, a lot of it's been taken out.
Oh.
Yeah, so it used to say iodized table salt. And now a lot of them say like no iodine on it.
So where are we getting our iodine
We're
now?
not, which is causing a lot of health issues.
Then why don't they just put it back in salt?
I don't know who this they is, but they're killing our health. I know. Great point. Yeah. And table salt is also very processed, so it strips out a lot of those micronutrients. So sea salt is a little better. Like something like Himalayan pink sea salt would be even better than regular sea salt. But it kind of goes back to like, if you're like, it's just like if you're dousing your food in olive oil because you think it's good for you, now your fat's like through the roof. So like if you're using tons of Himalayan sea salt or regular sea salt because you're like, oh, it's got nutrients. Well, the magnesium and potassium that's in that, you could get that from spinach, and it would be like a far better source than too much salt on your food.
I mean, that comes back to like good calories versus bad calories.
Totally.
Good nutrients versus bad nutrient sources.
Right. And we need salt, we need sodium. A lot of people get way too much because they're eating processed things.
Yeah.
But if you're just salting your own food, making a lot of your own food, it's pretty hard to eat too much salt.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I mean, just how much nutrition has changed over the years and how like eggs
I was just
were
going to say
terrible
eggs.
for you
Right.
and caused you to have really high cholesterol.
And now they're like
and
great.
now they're a superfood. And, it's so confusing.
There's just so much more research all the time. And so many people just make these black and white statements. And that's something I talk about with my clients a lot at the beginning is rarely, I don't think ever, will I be like, you can't eat that or don't eat that, right? Like we'll talk about, why maybe you're craving sugar and things to have that are better or, examples like that. But making these blank statements like sugar is terrible for you. Like, yeah, it's not great for you, but are you going to have it anyway? And can we have it in moderation where it still makes you feel good? And if you're a cyclist, you need sugar. I mean, so there's benefits and cons and everything.
And I feel like if, I don't eat a ton of sweets, but when I do, it's very selective. And it tastes so fucking good.
Because you're not having it like every night and having the thing that you don't really want. And totally. It's like, if they bring donuts to your break room at work, like, would you have gone and got a donut that day?
No.
Probably not. And like, is Safeway really make the best donuts? No. Like, so if you just skip it, and then when you go out with like your husband that weekend, you can get cheesecake and it's like so much better.
Right. Or Bosa donuts that are amazing.
And you're with somebody you love, not like at your desk eating a donut.
Right. So last fact or fiction, you can eat as much as you want as long as it's healthy.
So no, because it does come down to calories in, calories out. So you can definitely overeat. There's definitely people that are paleo that are still overweight, right?
Yeah.
Great example. But I think most people should like strive for eating too much healthy food and then work on the calories, because more natural foods and less processed foods are going to make you feel satisfied quicker. And so you're less likely to overeat them. If I gave you a bowl of cereal and gave you this equivalent amount of carbs and sweet potato, you would like eat a lot more cereal than sweet potato because it's just these empty carbs, and sugar. And you would get full on the sweet potato a lot sooner. So as long as you're having, real food at every meal, like protein, carbs, and fats, you're going to get satisfied a lot quicker, and you probably won't overeat them as much, but you still absolutely can.
Yeah. I'm going to add one that's not on here, but fruit juice is healthy.
Oh, no.
No.
Even if you get 100% fruit juice, it's still pure sugar.
Yeah.
And clients will often be like, oh, I shouldn't have fruit, right? Because it's sugar. And, there's natural sugar versus added sugar. You want to limit your added sugar. So if sugar is written on an ingredient label, you want to limit that.
Sure.
But a banana doesn't have an ingredient label. It's pretty hard to eat too many bananas. Somebody's done it. It's not something you should probably worry about being an issue.
Well, and I've heard that your body cannot tell the difference between fruit juice and a can of soda. So, in terms of like the sugar levels.
Right. They both like throw your insulin way out of whack, which is not a fancy concept. It's basically just like if this is your blood sugar, every time you have something that's like real quick digesting sugar, it spikes your insulin way up, so it's going to crash really fast. So whether that's a can of soda, a Monster, or fruit juice, you're still going to spike your insulin up and come back down. And it's those constant insulin spikes that people have a lot of health issues with.
You guys getting this back there? Yeah, you guys drink Monster, though. I've seen
There's
them.
something over there. A green can.
And then I've heard also that studies are coming out that based on your ancestors, it can influence the type of diet that you thrive on. So if you were, if your ancestors are from like Scandinavia, you might react way better to, fish.
Yeah.
If your ancestors are from like England, then you react, better to, I don't know, sheep and beef.
Sure.
Do you think that kind of plays into it?
I definitely think that there's some validity to that. Same thing with like the blood type diet. I think there's definitely based on your blood type foods that could make you more inflammatory, and same thing with your, your ancestry. I think that it's, again, kind of the top of the pyramid thing. Like I think the reason somebody is or isn't losing weight or isn't reaching their goals is not because they're from Scandinavia and they should be eating lamb and they're eating beef, So I think it's one of those things, like something that's been really awesome about working with you is you are so consistent, so we can play with fun things like higher fat and doing cool things pre and post workout to see how it impacts you. Whereas people that aren't as consistent, like you're just working on like really nailing the basic stuff before you can even worry about stuff like that.
I like how you call it consistent. Alyssa calls me annoying.
You're like, my nutritionist calls it consistency.
Yeah. So kind of to wrap up here then, do you have any last words of advice for people looking to start exercising and wanting to kind of learn more about their own nutrition and how to take kind of control?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I think community is so undervalued and so important. So if you dread going to the gym, if you don't belong to a community for your anything with your health, like your nutrition, your fitness, there's tons of Facebook groups. There's like tons of different ways you can get involved. I mean, obviously I'm an advocate of CrossFit, but there's a lot of variations that are similar community groups.
One of the reasons I love CrossFit is the community.
It's great.
I mean, I actually feel guilty if I miss because
it's like I'm bailing on my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So community is huge. Second, know that you are meant to feel really good. Like you are not meant to have back pain or headaches or a stomach ache all the time. And if a doctor's told you that, then you need to see a different doctor or maybe do some research, but you're meant to feel really, really good. And just to be mindful about your choices. The two, like this was something you and I have talked about, like the 2 p.m. crash is not normal just because other people are experiencing it. So it definitely takes some diligence, but just taking the time to be more like, why do I feel the way I do? Why did I decide to go get this for dinner? And really trying to be more conscious of your decisions can lead to really awesome things.
And if people want to find more information about you, how do they find you?
Yeah, so it's heypreslie.com, Preslie like Elvis, but only it's IE. And Hey Preslie is my Instagram, and then it's the Hey Preslie podcast.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming out and being on the show and giving us a little bit more information on nutrition and how we can all be a little bit healthier.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you in the next episode.